All right, good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is James Hatcher. I am the CEO for the Virginia region of the American Red Cross, and I am certainly glad to have all of you with us this morning as we celebrate the Virginia Region 2019 Help Can't Wait event. Before we begin, let me give you just a quick overview of some of the technical aspects of this Zoom event. During the session, everybody's microphone will be muted except for our speakers. If you have a question to ask any of us today, please feel free to enter it into the Q&A function, and our team will do our best to answer everyone's questions at the end of our presentations after all of our speakers have made their presentations. And also just to let everybody know that the speakers' comments, including their responses to any questions, will be taped and will be available for you to share with your teams, but individual attendees who are listening in will not be recorded. So let me start by saying the obvious. This does feel a bit surreal. You know, last year we held this event in the ballroom at the Westin. There were 200 people in attendance. And today we're hosting the event from our Richmond office, and there are 3 people in the room with me. We're all wearing masks and all maintaining proper social distancing. These are challenging and dynamic times, and I'm well aware, we are well aware that everybody is conducting their work in their personal lives in the midst of incredible change and incredible uncertainty. So let me take this opportunity to again thank everyone for joining us on the call this morning. Your presence here and your ongoing commitment to the Red Cross is a testament to your compassion and to your generosity and to your desire to support our communities. We are incredibly grateful to our annual partners across the Commonwealth who have supported the Red Cross mission for many years. I want to personally thank the leadership and staffs at Altria, CarMax, and Dominion Energy for their ongoing generosity and support throughout the years. We literally could not do our work without you. And I want to thank all of our other donors and partners who have sponsored this event and helped to keep the Red Cross ready to respond. We are gathered here today, albeit virtually, to celebrate the good work that your effort and support allows us to provide, and to update you on how the American Red Cross has shifted its delivery of mission-critical services. So I think this is a good time to remind everybody about the mission of the Red Cross. The Red Cross prevents and alleviates human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. We speak frequently to our teams that we are not really responding to COVID-19, but are continuing to carry out the virtual mission and the reality of COVID-19. The mission has not changed: collecting life-saving blood products, responding to home fires, supporting our active military veterans and their families, and sheltering those impacted by disasters has continued throughout Virginia. How we deliver the mission, however, has changed. In some respects, changed dramatically. Without your support and the tireless work of the volunteers and paid staff, we could not do this successfully. The slide shown here presents the highlights of the ongoing responses supported by the Virginia region since the outbreak of COVID-19. As is apparent, the Red Cross has remained active across all of our various lines of service. In providing these essential responses, the Red Cross has been following the CDC and Virginia government guidelines closely. The safety of our donors and our volunteers and staff is of our highest priority. Over the past 7 to 9 weeks, much of our workforce has been working from home remotely in order to better ensure the health and well-being of our teams. However, many of our team members have needed to come into our facilities or respond to needs directly in the community. In response, we have put in place strict guidelines around building access, practicing appropriate social distancing, and wearing personal protective equipment, such as the mask I'm wearing today, as I am in our Richmond facility. These adjustments have necessitated significant investments in things like personal protective equipment, technology upgrades, emergency housing, and an integrated condolence care program, which includes psychological first aid to those who have lost loved ones as a result of COVID-19. These expanded and adjusted services come with a significant price tag, so we are incredibly grateful to all of our financial supporters. If you haven't already done so, we hope that you will consider making a gift to the American Red Cross in support of our work. So moving on to our presenters, Today, we are fortunate to have 3 team members who are operating on the front lines of mission response and community support. They will share some specifics on how providing relief in the COVID environment is impacting our community both here and across the globe. First, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kim Sanford, the Director of Transfusion Medicine at VCU Health in Richmond, a position she has held since 2012. Kim serves as the board chair for the Capital Chapter Board in Richmond, where she has been a tremendous partner to me and a tremendous advocate for the American Red Cross. Dr. Sanford was inducted into the VCU Alumni Hall of Fame for the Department of Clinical Lab Services and was recognized as a VCU Medical Center Physician Champion in 2013. She's a passionate teacher who has been awarded the Outstanding Teacher Award in the Pathology Introduction courses for VCU medical students for 6 consecutive years. And in 2017, she was the recipient of the Enrique Gersten, MD, Faculty Teaching Excellence Award from the VCU School of Medicine. Kim is going to share her perspective around the ongoing need for blood gained from serving on the front lines of response. Let me introduce Kim.
Thank you, James. I appreciate that kind introduction. And I want to thank the organizers for putting this event on, as well as the participants who've taken the time from their day to join us this morning. I just want to walk you through some of the obstacles and the challenges that we faced in the hospital, particularly in transfusion medicine services due to this pandemic, that we could have never imagined would have happened previously. So on March 5th, I first saw that the coronavirus outbreak was posing a significant threat to the New York blood supply due to the increasing number of infections and shelter-in-place orders, which closed large businesses, schools, and universities. This resulted in the cancellation of blood drives in those areas affected by coronavirus. At first, this seemed to be isolated to large urban areas, but we understood that this would have a ripple effect that we would soon see in Richmond. 10 days later, on March 15th, Dr. Pampy Young, the Chief Medical Officer for American Red Cross, sent a correspondence to all blood banks nationwide, stating that the pandemic had resulted in thousands of canceled blood drives nationwide, which translated into hundreds of thousands of units that had not been collected. Our call to immediate action from Dr. Young was that we needed to reduce our blood transfusions by more than 25% immediately. Our approach to this alert at VCU Health was multi-pronged. First, we started screening blood orders for patients to ensure that we provided transfusions to those patients who truly needed it. We then escalated our concerns about our blood supply to our hospital administration, and our hospital administrators immediately started to postpone elective surgeries in a stepwise fashion. Then our hospital leadership recognized the need to increase our blood drives within the hospital. They closed the entire second floor of our cafeteria to accommodate a much larger area for blood drives, and then scheduled a number of blood drives, as well as put out the call to all of the healthcare workers in our hospital that how important it was for them to donate. The Red Cross donor centers in our community also extended their donor center hours in an effort to increase the blood supply. At VCU, we also implemented a blood conservation task force and scheduled digital conferences with all of our clinical partners in an effort to see how we could safely reduce the number of units transfused to our patients who are suffering from cancer as well as sickle cell anemia. In particular, there was, and there still is, a shortage of units that are available to our sickle cell patient population who requires blood from African American donors that have similar blood groups. And we also implemented a sealed Ziploc bag policy. And this was to prevent contamination of any of our blood products as they went out into the environment. Another action that we took with the American Red Cross was to start offering a brand new blood product that we had never offered before, convalescent plasma. And this was to be provided to patients who are newly suffering with COVID. This plasma is collected from those who've recovered from COVID, and have protective antibodies, which are then transferred by transfusion into patients in our hospital who are newly infected with COVID and whose bodies haven't had an opportunity to form protective antibodies and mount that immune response to help combat the virus. In our experience at VCU Health, we've seen that patients experience responses and improvements in their symptoms between 24 to 48 hours after receiving this plasma. And now, as we've transitioned to reopening our clinics and our surgical centers, we're providing treatment to patients whose elective care has been delayed, and now they're returning to our hospitals to have the surgeries that before may have been postponed and elective, but now they've reached a point of necessity. We're now straining a blood supply that is still in the phases of recovery. We're still seeing shortages of blood products, in particular, those rare units from African American donors desperately needed for our sickle cell patients. And in fact, even this past week on Friday, we experienced another critical blood shortage and had to screen blood orders for all of our patients in the hospital. Now more than ever, we need to increase our donations to the recovering supply of blood in face of the long journey that we have ahead of us. Please consider what you can do to help, because help for the patients in our community can't wait. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Todd Cahill, Regional Donor Services Executive.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Sanford, for that introduction. I appreciate it. I am very excited to be here today. This is interesting. This has been a new environment, a new world for many of us. Schools, businesses, other organizations are operating via Zoom. Unfortunately, at this time, the only thing we can't do via Zoom is collect blood. Not yet, anyway. I'd love to find a way to do that. Right now, I'd like to share with you a little bit about the response from the American Red Cross and what we've done and how we've handled the transition to and the current state of dealing with COVID-19 and this pandemic. Going back to the beginning of the timeline, the Red Cross leaders began participating in daily meetings with the CDC, the FDA, the AABB, which is the American Association of Blood Banks, and Health and Human Services to look at what the immediate and long-lasting impacts were going to be to our blood supply, both nationally and locally. We began coordinating our response with our humanitarian services partners, making sure that we were mobilizing any and all volunteer efforts that we could to respond to this as it evolved daily. We were monitoring and creating contingency plans for several items. Our inventories of blood and blood products, making sure that we were looking at our supplies, working with our suppliers to ensure that we had all of the necessary items on hand and in the pipeline to continue conducting our operations as scheduled. Our staffing, again, a very big challenge for us throughout this the last several months and moving forward. We monitored donor appointments, and of course we looked at scheduled blood drives. The safety of our staff, our volunteers, and our donors is of utmost importance to us, and we wanted to make sure we were implementing measures to ensure the utmost care and concern for all involved. On February 10th, the Red Cross initiated a travel deferral for individuals who had traveled to China, Hong Kong, and Macau as a preventative measure to begin screening donors. That later began to evolve and include other areas. The Red Cross and American Association of Blood Banks also issued an urgent need for blood donations. This was followed up by additional community partners, also supported through the CDC, the FDA, the Surgeon General, national, state, and local government officials, as well as our hospital partners reaching out and helping in any way that they could. We wanted to make sure also that we were responding and implementing additional wellness and safety protocols for our staff, our volunteer, and donors. So if you've been to a blood drive lately, you may have seen things are a little different. We began screening our staff prior to coming to work for temperature, also deferring staff because of travel and exposure. We also began screening donors prior to entering blood drives. We implemented social distancing measures. Initially, 6 foot separation at registration throughout the blood donation process, adding in enhanced disinfecting protocols, disinfecting and wiping down any and all hard surfaces that donors touch as they go through the process, and also ensuring that we moved our donation opportunities, both at our fixed sites and our mobile opportunities, to appointment only, which was a challenge for many at first. But then again, the benefit of it is ensuring that we have appropriate social distancing as we move through the process. Our own governor, Governor Northam, was even able to come in and donate on March 18th to show his support for the blood supply and encourage Virginians to come out. And Virginians did. We saw a fantastic showing. A surge of donors came out, and we continued to be able to meet the diminished level that Dr. Sanford mentioned due to elective surgeries being canceled. So on the next slide, this is the immediate impact of what we saw here in the state of Virginia over the last 3 months. As you can see, it's an eye chart. Here in the Richmond market, we lost over 6,000 units. 340 blood drives have been canceled over the course of March, April, and May. In Charlottesville, over 3,700 units, 165 blood drives. Norfolk, 10,000 units lost, 396 blood drives. Roanoke, 4,285 units, 177. And in Greenville, our Eastern North Carolina area, over 4,900 units, 195 blood drives. In total, nearly 30,000 units of blood that were scheduled to be collected were lost over the last 3 months. Over 1,200 blood drives were canceled as we were forced to make decisions to change the way that we collected blood. We've encouraged others to get involved. We've had to seek larger locations to be able to incorporate social distancing. So we've moved to large scalable locations, gymnasiums, auditoriums, large banquet facilities, hotels, etc. And again, we very much want to thank all of our partners who have encouraged and supported us and offered up space to conduct these blood drives, where we are able to redirect staff and resources and collect the much needed units as they present. On the next slide, this is what the worst case scenario looks like. And it happens. It happened to us. On March 24th, we had our first 2 collection staff in the Norfolk market test positive for COVID-19. Out of abundance of caution, we enacted a protocol that quarantined nearly all of our staff in that location. And unfortunately, we had to cancel or reschedule all of the blood drives for an entire week, resulting in a loss of over 550 units that were on the calendar. We did this out of an abundance of caution for our staff, our volunteers, our donors, and the public in general. And we feel we made the right move in protecting those that we care most about. So the path forward, what does it look like for us? This is our summer outlook. This is where our currently scheduled blood operations are. This is where our forecast lands. As you can see, we're falling short of our forecast. Our team is rapidly trying to fill our calendar, reschedule blood drives, reschedule opportunities to continue to grow blood donation opportunities. And as Dr. Sanford said, help can't wait. We're at a point where we need people to continue to encourage others to donate, continue others to schedule appointments, and find opportunities to volunteer and support blood donation in the community. This is a very important time for us as elective surgeries are continuing to be rescheduled, and the need and demand continues to grow. Thank you all for your time, and I'd be happy to answer questions later on. Again, our heroes wear black and red. We're very proud of our staff, our volunteers, our donors for what they've seen, what they've done, what they've been through on the front lines in dealing with COVID. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Kim, for your leadership and your passion in support of the Red Cross and the continuing work that you're doing, and for helping us to get better understand what's kind of been going on day to day right here in Virginia. Excuse me. Before we move on to our final speaker, I just want to take one more moment to thank another group of incredible partners who have supported our mission this year through event sponsorships across Virginia. We are disappointed to have had to have postponed many of our Celebration of Hero events this spring. And we want to thank all of you, all of our partners and all of our heroes from across the state of Virginia. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Katie Wilkes. Katie is currently leading the international media and communication efforts for the International Federation of Red Cross in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2014, Katie worked full-time on assignment for the IFRC, developing and launching a global health campaign in response to the Ebola virus disease in West Africa. Because she can't get enough of doing that in her day job, Katie uses her personal vacation time to deploy to disasters, including Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Harvey, and the recent California wildfires. Katie's experience and passion for the Red Cross mission make her uniquely qualified to discuss how the Red Cross is working internationally to help communities around the world. Katie?
Thank you so much, James, and good morning to everybody from Chicago. I want to just, express my gratitude for everybody who has really turned on their heels and made this an event worth attending, so thank you. I wanted to start off with a bit of a story, a glimpse, if you will, into the day of a life of somebody halfway across the world who really is putting in their all. So if we could advance to the first visual, we'll go ahead with that.
I am with Danilo and Andrea, and we are about to start a new shift. At the beginning of every shift, we have to check the whole ambulance, and we have to make sure that we have not only all the tools we normally use during the shift, but also all the new tools that we have for the COVID-19 emergency. We have the masks, the glasses, the goggles, and all the other tools right here. I'm not quite sure how to explain how sad it is when you need to explain to a son that it's probably not gonna see his dad or his mom again. And you have to tell them because the doctor at the central station tells you by phone that this is probably what's gonna happen. They ask you, are they sure they wanna put their mom or their dad in the hospital because they're probably not gonna see them again. And you need to tell them, you need to explain them that this is a very hard and dangerous situation. It's almost midnight and we just picked up the second person that was COVID positive, and we took them to 2 different hospitals. One of them already had her husband here, and now we are cleaning the whole ambulance. Every time we do a patient, we carry a person that it's positive to the COVID-19, we have to clean the whole ambulance.
So I think all of us can agree that that's both a heart-wrenching but a heartwarming story. And Martina is just one of nearly 13 million Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers around the globe responding to COVID-19 today. I'm sure you've heard the news of Italy all over on, broadcast, radio, print news. It's been really in the front lines. The Italian Red Cross is one of 192 national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies all around the globe. And all of their volunteers really continue to pivot to meet the needs of their local communities, just as we do right here at home in the United States. I think from a global perspective, it's important to realize that no country right now is unaffected as this pandemic rages on. In some countries in Europe, we're starting to see the curve flatten. In other countries like Germany, we start to see flare-ups here and there. And there are also ongoing concerns of a second wave in Asia Pacific. So I'd like to give a little bit of time today and talk about what a few of these national societies and their volunteers are doing around the world that you may or may not have seen in the headlines. Globally, Red Cross workers are helping with a lot of things. They are helping with contact tracing. They're screening people's temperatures in public places, and they're still actually transporting people by ambulance. In some of these national societies where they actually do health services on the regular, and they work in hospitals and clinics, this has just been amped up to another level of extremely cruciating around the clock work. They're staffing quarantine centers, delivering groceries and medicine to people in lockdown, and still educating the public to prevent that stigma of the virus, as well as staffing 24-hour informational hotlines. They're doing a lot of what we see in the American Red Cross, which is offering comfort, emotional support, knowing that this is an extremely trying time for everybody, no matter where you are in the world. This is a picture of the Turkish Red Crescent. And I pulled this photo because I think, as we watch the news a lot, we see a lot of people in the PPE, right, in the protective equipment. And I wanted to just share a quick anecdote that in places like Turkey, they actually are producing locally some of this PPE, and they are sourcing volunteers and migrants as well, producing up to 20,000 face masks and face shields every single day. And some of this is actually being done even through 3D printers. So really remarkable work. And they're also providing emergency cash. We know this is a really trying time economically as well. So they have a special program that they're actually giving emergency cash grants to many, many refugees, which have a high population in Turkey. So, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. In places like Syria, the ongoing hardship doesn't stop, and the Syrian Red Crescent volunteers are keeping their everyday programming going to help people like someone you see here. This is 6-year-old Ahmed, who was born paralyzed from the waist down. And the volunteers here are making sure that he's still able to get around safely, while thousands of others of volunteers work to sanitize entire cities like Aleppo. They're running hospitals and clinics. They're transporting people to healthcare areas. Anybody who calls that emergency number, they will, no questions asked, if they have the capacity, transport you, whether or not you are a COVID patient or not. And they're also delivering food to people. And Syria, I think it's worth noting, is one of the places that we are most concerned about people going hungry right now as food prices continue to soar. And this is for more than 9 million people in Syria alone that we're concerned about in terms of being able to afford that dinner on the table for people like Ahmed. Let's move on to the next slide, please. And here I want you to meet someone named Felix. Felix hails from Sierra Leone. It's an African country that was devastated by the Ebola crisis just a few years ago. But that certainly didn't stop him from wanting to help now during a second public health crisis. 2 years ago, he arrived in Spain to seek a better life and to pursue medicine while learning Spanish. He lost his job around the time that COVID first broke out in Europe. But even now he continues to raise his spirits and those around him by getting up every morning to volunteer with the Spanish Red Cross to deliver meals to people in need. I love his smile. Hopefully you do too. Felix actually arrived in Spain those 2 years ago on a boat crossing the Mediterranean, very similar to this one that you see. And every day still, I know that all of, the news is dominated by COVID, right? It's all we hear, we see, we continue to sort of absorb. But every day, hundreds of migrants still arrive on shore in Europe. And this photo actually is just a few weeks old. And here, yet again, the Italian Red Cross is stepping up. They're helping people off the ship and safely enter places where they can be quarantined. They're linking them with health services, providing that emotional support. They're even providing COVID tests, which is extremely remarkable. Food, water, hygiene supplies, and this is truly amazing. They are even helping to reconnect them with loved ones that they may have lost contact with. So brave volunteers and also brave people who have endured so much just to get to safety. Let's go to the last slide, please. I think to put it, I'll try to put it simply, is that our volunteers around the world truly are remarkable. Some of them even land on the cover of the New York Times, like in this photo just a few weeks back. They are taking care of people who are critically ill, who need that support, who need that love and that comfort. And our volunteers have always rushed into disasters across borders, even locally when others flee. And now we're facing that new challenge, holding steady to help at home as a crisis make waves around the world at the same time. The Red Cross and Red Crescent Network is stronger than ever, and you are the reason why we can keep going in times like this. So thank you for being a part of it.
All right, thank you, Kim, Todd, Katie, just so much appreciation for not only joining us this morning, but much more than that, for the work that you all continue to do out in our communities. So many of us are asked to stay at home, and that feels stressful and a burden sometimes, but there are a tremendous number of people like our three presenters today who are out in our communities, kind of again on the front lines of response, and we're just so appreciative for your work. We're going to move on to the question and answer portion. I've had a couple questions come in, but before we do that, in addition to our speakers and presenters today, I want to make sure to just thank you again for not only joining us this morning, but also for your ongoing support of the Red Cross and our communities. Without our generous blood donors and financial donors, that underwrite the cost of our blood drives, our transport vehicles, and our testing facilities, we could not collect and deliver the vital blood to our hospitals that Kim spoke about. Without support from our local foundations and partners like the United Way, we could not provide client assistance in the way of direct cash grants to those who are impacted by local disasters. And I can't go without saying, without our incredible volunteers and the paid staff, who I'm just so blessed and fortunate to work with, along with our annual financial partners and our individual donors, all of whom understand that disaster relief must include investments in preparedness, in response, and recovery. We could not care for families directly impacted by coronavirus or prepare for the upcoming hurricane season without your help. I want to challenge each of you today to think about how the Red Cross mission may have touched your life or that of someone you love. I ask you to consider those who are impacted by fires, by floods, and by other disasters, and consider a world where the Red Cross is not available to respond and support to those in need. Please consider making a donation by visiting redcross.org today. We are thankful for your support and certainly in need of your support to help us carry out our mission. I have one more person I'd like to thank, That is our events planner, coordinator, Chase Thaba, or Chase Schoolcraft. He's now Chase Schoolcraft. Putting this together, as we talk about the word pivot a lot. And so again, this went from an event with 200 people in a ballroom to a virtual event with 3 people wearing masks in the boardroom at the Emerywood facility, but it required gathering presenters from across the country and trying to recognize donors appropriately and engage our teams. And I just want to thank Chase for his effort and his work in helping make that happen today. So thank you, Chase. Now we have received a couple questions, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to address the first one, and then I have one for Kim and then one for Katie. And if anybody else has a question that they'd like to ask, if they could please put that into the Q&A function. So the first question is, how is the Red Cross planning for larger disasters? For example, something along the lines of Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Maria. So certainly that is something that is getting a tremendous amount of attention from the leadership of the Red Cross. What we would call large-scale sheltering, large mass care, delivery of services, what we would call congregate sheltering, that's sheltering people in a single space. So imagine Hurricane Harvey a few years ago, where we had several thousand people in the arena in Houston. How do we do that in the current environment where we are trying to practice social distancing, where we are trying to make sure that people who may be infected with the COVID virus are kept separate from those who are not infected? And it will be a challenge, but the Red Cross has a detailed plan in place to help support our local communities to make that happen. Right now, for smaller disasters, like home fires, floods, we have actually been using remote sheltering. We have been putting people in hotels here in Virginia. That's not a realistic approach to take for large-scale disasters, so we will be practicing social distancing. That means fewer people in every shelter. That means identifying more shelters where we can utilize their services in the facilities. That means working very closely with local partners, and that means changing the way we provide services. That includes mental health counseling, that might include feeding. All those things will have to be adapted to respect and follow social distancing rules and keep not only our volunteers safe and our staff safe, but also those who are living in and or partaking in the services from their shelters. So please know that that is something that we are currently planning for, and we will see how it works when we get here, but I'm confident that the Red Cross will respond with our local partners to make sure that happens well. The next question is for Kim. So I'm gonna, Kim, I will go ahead and ask the question, and then Chase will cut over to you. You mentioned about screening blood transfusions during a blood shortage. Could you expand on that, about the importance or what you meant when you discussed screening blood transfusions when there is a shortage?
That's a great question, and definitely I can provide an explanation for that. So what we do when we get a request for blood transfusion when we are screening blood orders is that we actually pull up laboratory data from that patient, and we look at their laboratory values to see if the transfusion request is actually indicated. So if we want to transfuse red blood cells, we look at their hemoglobin values to make sure that they are below what we think would necessitate a transfusion. If they need platelets, we look at their previous platelet count within the last 24 hours to make sure that it is a justified request. So when we get to this point, we want to make sure that we are providing transfusions to those patients that truly need it, because we have a limited resource. Sometimes, in our hospital, we have recently 650 up to 700 patients. And last Friday, I had 14 units of platelets on the shelf for almost 700 patients. So I have to be very judicious in who actually receives that blood product. So that's what we mean by screening. So we're looking at that information. We're also calling the physician, because if the number is above what we think it should be to necessitate a transfusion, there may be other extenuating circumstances that we're unaware of, such as bleeding or hemorrhaging, that may not be evident in the medical record. So we're trying to make sure that we're using this appropriately and we are using it judiciously. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the question. The next question, Katie, I think I'm going to forward this to you, and that's, how does the Red Cross, the American Red Cross, work with International Red Cross and Red Crescent groups throughout the world?
That's another great question. The American Red Cross is really fortunate to have a range of activities that we work on every day, both with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies based in Geneva, but also with so many other national societies around the world. The American Red Cross every year does what we call, we have actually a roster of very highly trained disaster response specialists, people who are trained in logistics, in sheltering, in communications such as myself, IT technology. These are folks who have been trained for years, that at the drop of a hat, when a big disaster happens, for example, in Mozambique just a year ago, in April, we had a huge cyclone there. We were able to deploy many people. Same thing in the Bahamas last September. We actually had 40 American Red Cross specialists on the ground, and I was privileged to be one of them and to see their activities in person. These folks are on call. They say, I will go, I will spend at least a month on the ground at these disasters, and I will do my everything in my specialty to help that national society, to help the Bahamas Red Cross, for example, or to help the Mozambique Red Cross, really at a time that they need it. So that's just one way. We also have ongoing services and support in places like the Philippines, in Bangladesh, certainly in places around the world that, you know, it's more of a preventative, but also long-term care. We were in Haiti for many, many years after the earthquake, making sure that their staff and their volunteers are fully supported in case another disaster strikes. Places like Cox's Bazar, we've done amazing support to their training, where they can be really at the ready in case, you know, something hits. And I think it's just one of the remarkable places that the American Red Cross can leave our sentiment of thanking the people around the world that are doing an excellent job and just being a bridge to support.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Katie. And thanks again for that question. Kim, we have another question for you, and I'm going to rely on you hopefully to understand, how are you implementing blood management standards during the pandemic?
Yeah, that is something that we certainly take into consideration for all of our everyday actions, and we're trying to continue to do even more so now. So, and as we move into going back to elective surgeries, we're making sure that our patients are optimized before they go to elective surgeries, which minimizes the need for blood. So that's one of the ways that we're actually helping to reduce the strain and the need for blood during elective surgery. Now, may not be elective, may be a necessity for our patients. So that's one important component for our patient blood management program.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanford. I had a question from State Farm, asked, how can local businesses support the Red Cross during COVID-19 and go forward? You know, an obvious answer is financial support. As I referenced during our presentation, the current environment or the current processes by which we're responding to disasters and preparing for hurricanes, and we'll certainly be having to operate during hurricane season, will come with an elevated price tag. Also, the reduction in blood drives and the loss of collected blood units will also impact the organization. So financial support is always valued. In-kind donations, those can be just simple things, snacks to serve at a blood drive, small bottles of hand sanitizer to have available at our facilities for people to use. There are a variety of ways that people can support the organization, gift cards. that we can utilize in helping people that we can use in the community. And then, of course, volunteering to come in and give blood. You know, being a blood donor is a critical part of need in the community. Make an appointment, go online, see where an appointment lies. This is, as has been said, the need for blood is ongoing and constant. As elective surgeries begin to become more relaxed and begin to escalate in the numbers that are happening at our local medical centers and hospitals, the need for blood will certainly increase. And as that demand increases, we're going to need to be available to provide that supply. We are already seeing a significant increase in demand over what we had projected just 3 or 4 weeks ago, based on the loosening of some of the regulations or loosening of stay-at-home orders across the country. So great question. Thank you very much. A question for Todd, if you were on the line with us. Somebody asked, what can a person expect when they go online and make an appointment to give blood? What can they expect when they arrive at one of our facilities?
That's a great question. So what anyone can expect going online, first and foremost, you'll be able to view all of the criteria as far as what you can expect to see at the blood drive, the requirement to wear masks. And when you show up at the blood drive, again, all donors and staff will be wearing masks. You'll see indicators marked on the ground for social distancing. We will have either a staff or a volunteer person at registration taking individuals' temperatures. And then again, you'll see our staff moving people through the process, disinfecting every step of the way, ensuring social distancing between donors and staff throughout the process. And again, our appointment only blood drives are meant to be, at this point, to enforce social distancing. And as we continue to move forward, that is something that may change, that may loosen up, but currently you'll see pretty full appointment schedules as the pent-up demand for donors to donate is there. The awareness is there, the need is there. So if your first attempt to find a blood drive or a blood center to donate at is not there, continue to look further out. And again, make blood donation part of your preparedness efforts to do several times throughout the year.
Somebody else has asked, what does the Red Cross, or what are the expectations of the Red Cross in terms of returning to work and returning to normal? And that's a great question, and I don't think it's one that has a set answer. The Red Cross is monitoring the safety of our staff, our volunteers, and our donors across a broad spectrum, both in our facilities, out in the community, donors that are coming in to donate blood, our financial donors, our disaster cycle service responders, our volunteers. We are out in the community and or in our facilities across a lot of different platforms. I can tell you that the national leadership of the Red Cross will always defer to the health and safety of our staff and our teams. So what you see when the governor of Virginia starts talking about, and also we need to have a national message for our teams. So as the governor of Virginia starts to relax stay-at-home orders, the Red Cross will continue to monitor what we feel is the right response, both at a national level and within a state level, to ensure that we're keeping our teams safe and well. And, you know, so it's a question that I can't answer in terms of when will we return to working from our facilities, when will we return to less social distancing requirements, when will we loosen some of the requirements of our blood donors and what they can expect when they come to our facilities. We will not do any loosening of restrictions until we feel it's safe to do so. So let me ask if we have any other. That was the last of the questions I had. In a part, let me add to that, because somebody did inquire about people who kind of say, well, we don't believe that the pandemic is as serious as people are making it out to be. You know, people are certainly going to have their own opinions about things, but again, our default position is always going to be to the well-being, safety, and health of our staff, our volunteers, and our donors. and we will always defer on the side of caution to make sure that they're taking care of it and they're well. So Chase, are there any other questions for the panel at this point? All right. Well, again, I want to thank all of our attendees today for joining our call. I want to thank you for your ongoing and continued support of the American Red Cross. If you do think of any questions or have any questions later that we have not addressed or they come to you after this, please feel free to reach out to us. I encourage you to stay safe, stay well, consider giving blood and supporting the Red Cross with your financial support. But most of all, I do wish you and your family well and safety in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Thank you very much for joining us today.